Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's so good to have you here. I hope everyone's having a great day. Okay, welcome if you're new. My name is Stacey and I'm an infidelity coach. I say infidelity recovery coach, helping unfaithful people heal from their affairs. Okay, so let's get into it. But before I do, sorry. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below. Please check the description box below because I have a link on how you can work one-on-one with me and some other links to my website and things like that. So let's get into today's video. Today's video is 10 reasons people have an affair. Now, I think it was last week I put up why Christians have an affair. And so this week I want to, look a little bit beyond faith, like that part, the spiritual part of us, and look at practically why we have an affair, why we're prone to having an affair, are vulnerable, or things like that. Okay, so number one reason is death. So death of a loved one, death can bring so much pain to a person, like a pain of loss and just the grief, or you could probably even add grief into this one also, because we can grieve many things. We can grieve loss of a job, loss of a relationship, loss of a dream or a business we wanted. Anything like that can cause us to grieve. I have noticed, however, that when a client comes in and they have experienced the loss of a loved one, and it doesn't have to be soon. I've seen this go, maybe 2 or 3 years. Someone will say, well, my dad died like a couple of years ago, or my mom died, and I'm still struggling. The affair partner kind of appeared on the scene, a couple of years later, and I just felt so alive and I felt so happy. That's a lot of the stuff that I hear, from some of my clients, and it was enough for me to say, hey, death of a loved one can really make us vulnerable to having an affair. And I believe it's because, so when someone passes away, you have that, that first initial few months and maybe even a year where, you're grieving and it's a shock and you're in transition, trying to figure out, how to get your footing. That's kind of where I'm at right now. It's been 3 months since my mom died, and I'm kind of trying to figure out, who I am without her, like what is my life without, responsibility of care for her, that kind of thing. So it can cause like an imbalance. But if we don't properly heal through grief, if we don't manage the stages and actually go through them in a correct way, we can start to live with a low level of sadness and a low level of unhappiness. Because if we don't put ourselves back in focus, meaning if we don't give ourselves hope, God is always talking about the future, giving me excitement or giving me joy, telling me, hey, I still have a life here on earth. He still has things for me. I still have kids. So my focus is going forward, like into my future and looking at my life. But if we don't have that, and the loss seems like we cannot function anymore, we will begin to adjust our emotions to a sense of just survival, and we can just go into survival mode for years. And I did this with my affair partner. I just kind of went into like a low level of sadness where I felt like I was just surviving and I wasn't really thriving in life anymore. And I did that for a while. So I know how that can cause us to just kind of feel like we're dead inside. So if you're like that, if someone feels that way and this has happened to them, and this person comes along and now they're showing empathy and compassion and they're validating you, and they're there for you, or they may even say, hey, I lost a parent too, and now you guys have something in common. It can really, if we're not careful, make us vulnerable to that person where, okay, oh my gosh, now you've become like excitement for me. And I've seen a lot of people will use the affair partner as a distraction because it's a positive thing, right? In a sense where, it releases, seeing that person releases dopamine, or the excitement releases dopamine. So now my body is filled with pleasure, reward hormones, that kind of thing. Whereas before it was filled with grief and sadness. So we will use the affair partner as a great distraction, escape, that kind of thing from losing someone. So okay, let me go on to number 2. I don't want this video to be too long for you guys. All right, so loss of emotional connection in marriage. Many couples do not realize, and my husband and I are very guilty of this, from before the affair. We don't realize that we have to maintain that emotional connection. We have to prioritize our marriage, and we have to create a safe space for each of us to be able to express our needs, our concerns, whatever it may be. We need to be able to do that for each other. Lots of times once you get married, it's like, okay, well, now life sets in, kids come, the kids' activities take more priority, hobbies, work, whatever it may be. Now I don't think the marriage needs as much work, or the marriage needs to be a priority, and we'll just kind of coast along on, old feelings, and then that's how we end up being roommates. And then we start to spend less and less time together. Now, I was reading an article, and I don't remember who this article was from, but I was reading an article about how much time a couple needs to spend together. And they were suggesting a couple needs to spend at least 15 hours a week of undivided attention, no phones, no distractions, just talking to each other, just listening, being there, sharing that emotional, sharing emotional issues, that kind of thing. And that helps to create, when we do that, it helps to create that emotional connection that we all need. But a lot of couples don't get to spend that much time together, or, and I know it's very difficult to do that, but they don't even get any time together, not even like an hour. So if you think about a rubber band, over time it just stretches and then it eventually breaks. So it's like that with a couple. The less and less time they spend together, the more they're pulled apart. Eventually that emotional connection is broken, and the emotional connection is really what every one of us is after. We're after that emotion, that intimacy. And emotional connection is your foundation of an amazing relationship. So when that starts to fall apart, now our needs for emotional connection starts to go unmet. And if we're not aware of this and we don't know how to fix it, then we become very vulnerable, because as humans we have a need to connect with other humans. So when you are bonding with a coworker at work, or you're laughing and you're flirting, that's, you're starting to form intimacy here and form that emotional connection. And it's really easy to fall off into an affair from that point on. Okay, number 3 is your attachment style. I've spoken about this once already, and I'm a big believer. A lot of us do not understand that we're walking around with an insecure attachment style, and all that means is an attachment style is formed while we're kids. It's our little kids, actually, like toddlers, and it means, how do we connect with our caregiver? How do we attach to them? And we can grow up insecure. We can not have our needs met. We can have trauma in our life. And as we grow up, we adopt beliefs around relationships and, our partners, like how we interact with them. And if we have an insecure attachment style, then we become very hyper vigilant on watching our spouse, in other words, like watching their behavior. And we will rewrite the story of what they're saying. So we have like a negative narrative going on in our minds when our husband or our wife does something that triggers that wound. And it's like, oh my God, they don't love me anymore. So for example, my core one was abandonment. I just believed that men would leave me, and that comes from my childhood. So anytime I sensed that my husband was pulling away, or he wasn't consistent with his behavior, well, that triggered that, okay, now he's about to leave me. And when you have that kind of story that you tell yourself that every man will leave you, then you have your behavior. There's a behavior with that, meaning that there's something I have to do to make sure I'm never abandoned. So for me, that fear set in, and oh my gosh, my husband's gonna leave me because he doesn't love me, because he's pulling away. So I need to ensure that myself, like me personally, I'm not worried about my husband anymore. He's made the decision to not, want to be with me. Then I need to find someone who will. And that's my story. That's the story that was going on in my mind. And I see it a lot with my clients. It's not, of course, it's not the exact same one. Everybody has different core wounds, but I do see it. And that story we tell ourselves will make us vulnerable to having an affair, because we tell a story, it creates an emotion, and then it's going to produce a behavior. In me, it produced a behavior of like, okay, this guy's flirting with me, I'm going to flirt back. If he's interested, we're going to, I have to get out of this unstable marriage, that kind of thing. So it's very important to understand what your attachment style is, and work on it. If it's insecure, get the help you need to change that to secure, because you can change it. You can work on it. Relationships. Okay, number 4, resentment. Resentment is huge in relationships, and resentment comes from when we have unresolved conflict, when we are not agreeing, or the story, like the negative story that I was telling myself. Well, my husband doesn't spend time with me, so he doesn't like me, so he doesn't love me. And because I was a people pleaser, I didn't have a voice, meaning I didn't give my emotions, my needs, and my concerns a voice in the marriage. So what I did was I internalized the anger that I would feel with my husband if we didn't see eye to eye, or if I had unmet needs, I would turn that inward. And anger turned inward can come out in passive aggressive behavior, and it can definitely cause us to feel resentment. And when resentment starts to set in, we start to distance ourselves more, and more away from our partner. And the resentment acts like a wall. So now I cannot express to you emotional upsets, or whatever it may be. We cannot connect emotionally once resentment is there, because now I have unforgiveness. Now there's all this stuff between us, and I'm not allowing you to make it better, or you might not be wanting to make it better. Whatever the situation is, that's where resentment comes from. And it definitely makes us vulnerable, because while I am pulling away from my spouse, I still have needs of connection. I still have, needs to feel wanted. We all do. So here comes, someone else. Satan knows when to send a person. He knows who to send. Just the right person to send to trip us up. Here comes this perfect guy. And now he's giving me all my needs, and my heart is completely open to him. So resentment is huge in making us vulnerable to having an affair. So we have to be careful with that. We have to do our best to resolve conflict. All right, number 5, the power struggle stage. Now, the power struggle stage in marriage is a little bit different than affairs, but right now I want to talk about in marriage. So it's all about, a power struggle is all about the role that each person plays in the marriage, like their responsibility. And it's how we influence each other's behavior. So it's kind of like a give and take, it's a compromise. When the relationship becomes out of balance, here comes resentment, loss of emotional connection, bickering can occur, and usually unresolved conflict. So this kind of slides down from number 4 with the resentment. But, bickering, like we're always mad at each other, we're always snippy, we're always fussing at each other. You can see that because the dynamic of the way the relationship is going is not balanced. It's not a give and take. It's not, I'm clear with my role, you're clear with yours. And it's not only just the responsibilities that we have in the marriage. That's just one of the things. What it's about is, do I feel seen? Do I feel heard? And are you showing me empathy when I'm talking to you about X, Y, and Z? That's really what it is. If I don't feel seen, if I don't feel heard, now there's going to be a struggle, because some people might have, they might feel like they're being attacked when you talk to them about not doing the dishes. And when they feel like they're being attacked, then now they're on the defense, and now they're going to rebel against you. So there's no way after that point you're going to get them to do the dishes. It just won't happen. But if a partner, if your spouse comes to you and say, hey, I work 40 plus hours a week, you work 40 plus hours a week, and it's really hard on me, do you think we could split the load of doing the dishes, or can we kind of figure out a schedule just to take some weight off of both of us? Now we're coming from a different perspective, and it's not more about why you're not doing the dishes. you need to do the dishes, I can't do everything, you know. So now we're trying to find a healthy balance. So that's really the power struggle stage. And there's some examples of what it kind of looks like when you get out of balance, or what can cause you to focus on, meaning this is some of the things that people argue that causes out of balance: sexual intimacy, decision making, responsibility, and finances. Now, when a couple starts to go into the power struggle stage and there becomes an imbalance, there's three power dynamics that follow that. There's demand and withdrawal, fear and shame, distance and pursuer. And when we get into that, those three power dynamics, it's kind of like the example I gave. Well, you're not doing the dishes. Well, I don't have time to do the dishes. Now I'm rebelling and you'll never get me to pick up a dish. You know, subconsciously they might be saying that to themselves. So I'm not going to go into this like too long, but I want to give you an idea of what the power struggle stage is, because a lot of people, you know, they have expectations in marriage and they don't know how to discuss this. You know, so you might have like somebody might make a demand. I want you to do the dishes. You need to do the dishes. The other person's going to withdraw, rebel. Now the person who is demanding is going to become resentful. I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. You don't care about me. And when you add attachment wounds on top of that, it's a complete nightmare. So be careful for the power struggle stage in your marriage. It can definitely make you vulnerable and cause all of these other things to just start to kick up. Number 6 is daddy issues. Many times when a woman grows up without a dad, she lacks the validation and security in herself that she needs. So she will look to daddy figures. I see this a lot with single women. Now, listen, ladies, if you are single and you are attracted to an older man, I am by no means saying that everyone who's single and marries someone older than themselves has daddy issues. I am not saying that. Let me just throw that little disclaimer out there. I am saying I have worked with a lot of single women, and even with myself, even though I wasn't single for long and I was married, I could still see my own daddy issues surfacing in the type of people that we are attracted to. So that's what I'm saying, because you can be married and have daddy issues, and your affair partner could look like, not necessarily look like your dad, but he could fit or be an example of the dysfunction that you were raised in with your dad, or he might be similar to your dad. So now I'm seeking the validation from my dad in this person. So this is very possible too. So you want to be aware of that. And you know, that's the end of the list that I have. But you know, I just want to say that it's okay to get help for any of this stuff. You know, we're not born with a manual on how to live, how to heal core wounds, any of those things. You know, we just want to feel connected, but we want to do it in a healthy way. So if you're struggling with anything, please leave a message down below, or you can email me, or we can set up a one-on-one. But I just want to say and encourage you, it's okay to seek help and get yourself in a healthy place so you can learn how to have a healthy relationship. All right, guys, let me jump off of here. This video is getting long, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.